to Quilting with Dawn, Dueling Quilts. If you're just tuning in, I'm working on 2 quilts at the same time, hence the Dueling Quilts title. To bring you up real fast, I am doing both a geometric quilt, which I'm calling Geo, there it is, and a quilt top that I've actually designed with Carolyn, calling it Cathedral Glass, and I'm developing a pattern for it, and this is the test run. So, where I left you last, I had chosen the colors for Geo with one exception. I wasn't sure I liked the orange. In fact, I'm not the only one. So what I'm doing is swapping it out for another red fabric that'll go nicely with the other reds I've got. To show you here, here's some of the other reds that I've got. You can see that it works well. So this quilt uses 16 2.5-inch strips, and I've got 8 reds with 2 of each type of red, and similarly 8 blues with 2 of each type of blue. And then I'll be sequencing those to give me the pattern I like for Geo. Now, here's the other thing that involved color choices. I thought I'd already made up my mind on the jelly roll that I'm going to use for Cathedral Glass. And if you recall, I designed this quilt so it uses exactly 1 jelly roll. 40 2.5-inch strips, which will be divided into 4 strip sets of 10 strips each. If anyone has done a Bargello quilt, quite often that's how you do it, is you build strip sets, and that's what I'm going to explain how I do that. But here's the rub. Okay, here is the jelly roll that I unpacked with Carolyn, and she actually showed me a trick where you have to shake out the jelly roll, because if it's got pinked edges, you get this fuzz everywhere. So it was fun. We went outside, shook it out, there was cloth dust everywhere. But the thing is, this really only has 5 color choices in it, because it has a bunch of strips that are mildly different, but they're all the same color, with one exception. Same thing. There's some light blues. They're nice, but they almost will all look the same. Medium blues almost all look the same, 8 strips, and then dark blues almost all look. You get the idea. I wasn't getting enough variation to build up what I thought was enough contrast in the fabrics to give me that stained glass look. So Carolyn says, "Come with me." And we went down to her stash, and I quickly discovered, after a couple options, something I really like. It's a bunch of uniquely colored batik strips that Carolyn collected as a strip set. But that was the selling feature, I think, when she got it, is that there's all these different colors. I mean, if I flip through, almost every one of them is different. It's going to be so much fun to do Cathedral Glass with all these different colors, because then I can make my 4 strip sets. Each of them will be unique, and it's just going to pop when the strip sets are built. And as you can see, hopefully you're seeing these colors here, how fun they are. So yeah, so these are batiks. Batiks are not hard to sew. They just take a bit of care and feeding because they are thinner. Not a problem. When I did my lap kitties quilt, it was with batiks, and I had no trouble at all sewing those. Just have to be careful. And also, as you can appreciate, it also adds a bit of easiness because you can't get the wrong side of the batik. Usually they're the same on both sides. Isn't that nice? So this is the fabric choices. I'm going to give this jelly roll back to Carolyn. It's going to go back into her stash. So it won't roll up as prettily as it was when we got it. In fact, that looks pretty bad. But this goes back to Carolyn. And I'm ready to go. So, hi there. All right. This is a bit awkward. I'm not sure I'm going to use this. But I'm now going to start cutting each of these strips with the fabric times 2.5 inches into the lengths. So what I'm going to start doing now is following these excellent instructions for Geo, right? That it tells you how to cut each strip into the pieces you need, and then it goes on similarly for the sashing, the white fabric that I showed you is going to be in between all the various colors, and then the core fabrics and border. And it's pretty straightforward because they've done the math to make sure that each of your cuttings will total up per strip to 40 inches. So then, yeah, most, if not all, strips are at least 40 inches with the fabric, right? So I'm just going to true the end here and then start cutting. And I have 2 pieces of blue fabric, of blue strip here. So the first length is, according to this pattern, 12.5 inches. So I just set the 12.5, line it up, and cut. Then I set to, 10.5. and cut. So, the color play and how I'm going to run this pattern, as you can see it here, is I'm going to match blues and reds. So I'm going to do, each block is going to have the same blues and reds. I'm not going to shuffle it all up and make it chaotic. I want a little bit of structure, a bit of order. So then what I've done is I've matched each blue with the red fabric to more or less have some nice counterpoint. This red here is more of a softer red, but with pattern I put a more of a sharp pattern with this blue. Similarly, these ones just seem to work nicely together, and in between I've got sharper reds and softer blues. And that's just the way it's come out. And then you can see the color play because you've got the white sashing that's going to be in between all these color strips, and then you've got this color which is going to be the center blocks and the border. So I think it's going to look great. The other thing is the cutting pattern in the pattern is a compromise. And what it does then is that the author has come up with the simplest way to cut the fabric, but then what it doesn't do is optimize the amount of fabric you're using in between the three sizes. I suspected she was aiming at the twin size as being the most optimal fabric cutting, but nevertheless, I did the math, because that's what I do, and if I cut a little more smartly, instead of using almost 2.5 yards of fabric, I'll use less than 2 yards. I'll use actually, instead of using 83, 84 inches, I'm going to use 60. See the savings? I finished cutting all the fabric required for Geo. Now in that last clip you just saw, you may have noticed that it wasn't just me bopping around there cutting fabric. Because I was cutting fabric and Carolyn was watching me and she told me I was doing it all wrong. I might exaggerate a bit, but not much. Apparently my body posture, the way I'm holding the cutter, was not up to her standard. Now working through it and me playing with it a bit, I did discover Carolyn is by training a chef. She became a chef before she was a sewer. And she holds her knife a certain way, and she in fact holds her cutter the very same way. Whereas me, never being a chef, I hold a cutting knife, you know, cutting steaks or whatever, potatoes, onions, I hold the knife a different way, and I hold it usually with my thumb guiding where I'm cutting. So my hand is twisted more this way, and Carolyn's is more this way. And I just didn't find it natural to hold the cutter the way Carolyn was. It just didn't feel right to me. So I'm sticking with the way I hold it, but I did learn you can hold it a little farther back and somehow it gives you better leverage and better cutting motion. Also, Carolyn pointed out that I was using my whole body to cut. I really just need to hold my position and use my arm. So definitely some cutting experimentation, but I did it. So I'd already finished all the colored strips. Here they are. Here's all the white sashing strips in the various lengths required. And the squares required for the core of each block. There's 16 blocks in this quilt. Ta-da! So what you see here. Now, I haven't actually had to start cutting fabric yet for my cathedral glass quilt. Remember, it's going to look something like this. Well, the design uses 4 10 strip sets. Therefore, 40 strips is what you get in a jelly roll. What you see in front of you here is the jelly roll strips that I have laid out in color groups, because this is how I'm going to do it with the design. I've got all my purples with a twist, because I couldn't make it exactly right, but I've got the purples, the blues and greens, the yellows and browns, and the pinks over here. Again, it's the general areas that each of these is going to become a 10 strip set. Then I'll sew them, and then I will cut them into the vertical slices that you need to make the design. But that's going to be the next episode of Quilting with Don. All I've got left to do now is cut the black sashing that goes in between each of the Bargello style, if you will, strip sets that are going to be forming the bulk of cathedral glass. Surprise! Okay, I am at the point where I'm going to finish this episode of my Dueling Quilts. So I've cut most of the fabric, and I have not yet cut the black sashing because I really wanted to finish the strip sets first and measure how tall they're going to be assembled to make sure I don't waste fabric on the black sashing. Nevertheless, I can quickly update that due to my creative cutting of the white sashing for Geo, whereas if I'd followed the pattern, it would have had me cut with the fabric by 83 inches. I was able to narrow that, you ready for this? From 83 to 52 inches. Can you think about that? It's almost a 40% savings just by doing a bit of creative cutting. So that will make those who don't like to waste fabric go, wow, way to go, Don. Others might say, wow, why'd you spend all that extra work for an extra, almost 30 inches of fabric? But there you are. You see here this machine because I didn't want to leave you hanging with nothing visual at the end. So I went and sewed my first block mostly from Geo. And here it is. Ta-da! Came out pretty good, eh? Well, here, get it in front of the machine so you can actually see it. Hopefully that focuses on it. But anyway, the point is, it came out quite nicely. It's not done yet. The pattern has me cutting 2 lines from one corner outwards, splitting the block into 3 pieces. So it'll be 30-degree increments from one side to the other. And then you sash that. I didn't decide to do that because I'm still tweaking, and I'll get there when I actually get a physical reference in the next phase, how I'm going to assemble Geo. So next steps, for the next episode, I'm going to be sewing my strip sets and starting to cut them into shape. I'm going to be continuing to sew my Geo blocks. And in fact, I'm going to finish both quilt tops in the next episode. That's the plan. And I'm going to start on that tomorrow. So today is now the 29th of March. I spent the last 2 or 3 days cutting and playing with fabric. So as a friend of mine says, yeah, you do quilting with Don. That must be like fun with fat flags from Sheldon and Big Bang Theory. Well, so I called this episode Fun with Fabric because that's what I did. I played with fabric. Now, carrying on one last tradition that I do with most of my videos. Friends of ours, Rob and Mary Lou, just came back from Mexico, and they brought me a wonderful bottle of tequila. This is a good sipping tequila that's at a reasonable price. So I've never heard of it, but that's cool. I did try it. It's called Azul, which means blue in Spanish, oddly enough. And it's a reposado, so it is a good mid-grade tequila, but in fact it tastes wonderful. So I'm gonna pour myself a wee little sniff here. This is how I drink tequila, straight up. I know you can mix it with drinks and that's fine, but you don't want to go mixing a fine tequila like this with, lime for margaritas or something. Just drink it up straight and it's wonderful. So, hope you enjoyed this Fun with Fabrics episode of Quilting with Don. Next episode is you're going to start seeing some quilts come together. Yeehaw. All right, guys, have a great one and cheers.